Hi, welcome back to my channel, Midnight Zero Astrology. This is Midnight and I'm back with another Sun video. Today we're going to be talking about Sun in Scorpio. As a reminder, I think your Sun is your most biggest, brightest star in your birth chart. It's your own personal Leo, and it's stuff that you're going to gain fame from because it is so bright. And if you nurture the Sun, you're going to see everything around you blossom. So what does that mean if your Sun is in Scorpio? Well, your Sun is ruled by magnetic Pluto, which is about death and transformation, and traditionally Mars, the planet of aggression, war, passion, death, passionate death, transformation, all of that comes together in the sign of Scorpio. And the best term to explain, you guys, is that you're simply magnetic. Have you ever put like two magnets together and felt the weird feeling in between them? To me, that's Scorpio. It's like a heavy pulse, a heavy gravity, and you can't help but notice these people. Even if they don't like to be noticed, you just notice them. This can make them a little bit uncomfortable sometimes and paranoid because they're well aware that they're noticed, and this can make them kind of cautious around people because they are represented by the Scorpion, which is not aggressive but is going to defend its territory. You have to come to it though. Usually Scorpio doesn't throw the first punch in confrontations, but it will respond to you just like real Scorpions. I think it's noteworthy to point out with Scorpio that you are like the most acquired taste of the water signs. Crabs are really delicious animals, and so are fish. Like, a lot of people like them, but not many people like to eat scorpions. I think that China and Vietnam are some of the only countries that eat scorpions. Maybe other ones. If you know of any, comment down below. But I imagine it's a very acquired taste. It is a mixture of pleasure and pain, kind of like you guys. So the people who do like you and love you really, really, really love you. And sometimes people are like, not my thing. But don't worry, you have a huge enough fan base for you to not even worry about the people not interested. Scorpio is a water sign. It is fixed water. So think of a little lake that just doesn't budge. That is Scorpio. It's very fixed in its feelings, and which means it's an expert on its own feelings. You can't tell a Scorpio about itself because he already knows everything there is to know. And the fixed nature is what makes their love intoxicating to receive, because once they love you, the likelihood of that changing is very minimal. They're always going to love you once you pass their tests, because they do like to vet people. They will put you through tests, and each Scorpio Sun's different, so this test looks different. And if you pass, you get the gold card. They're going to love you forever no matter what. But if you don't pass, you're going to end up one of those people that probably make videos about why Scorpios suck. Because it hurts. It really does. Believe me, I know. Scorpio is tied to the reproductive system. And the reason why I think this is important is because they're very much experts on emotional survival. Because if you think of the reproductive system, it's all based on survival. Humans can't survive as a species if we don't reproduce, so that's why Scorpio is associated with that. And they're very well aware of where they need to tread and where they need to avoid. And oftentimes a Scorpio, even though they're capable of all this intense love on one fortunate target, they can kind of get scared by that same feeling, because they're like, wow, if I really do give someone all this type of love, then I'm bound to it by obligation. Like, and I don't mean it like Capricorn boring obligation. I mean like it's inescapable for them after a certain point. So sometimes they get afraid of what they might do to defend or keep their loves around. So some Scorpios maybe are more cautious, and they will go the more practical route and maybe get someone. Think about earth signs. They might feel more stable with someone that, you know, brings them down to earth a little bit more. And maybe it's not a wild, passionate love, but maybe they get to take a break from that part of themselves because they know what they're capable of once they do go down that romantic love you until death, and even in death, you know, they know how they're gonna get. And they do, like I said, run away from that emotion sometimes. And I can kind of understand, if you're gonna love someone forever and ever and ever and ever, and you're gonna do anything imaginable to defend that love, of course you're gonna want to vet them to see if they're worth it. And number two, of course you should be scared, because that is a very powerful thing to acknowledge in yourself and to understand that you're going to go through hell for someone. So I definitely understand why they can be, you know, hesitant to share that watery, intense heart of theirs. So, because Scorpio is so tied to emotional survival and to that reproductive system, they are also experts in understanding basic human reasons behind actions, because most humans will do certain actions in order to survive. That's why they're very they always pay attention to the actions, and I guess this is what's so Martian about them. They really do like to dissect people's actions and find out the underlying motives and motivations behind certain people's actions, because they know it's all tied to survival. And this can lead them to not really trust many people, because they see the things they do in order to survive, and sometimes those aren't very pretty things, and they kind of look down on that, and they're like, oh, I would never trust these people, look what they're doing in order to survive. While on the other hand, they can see someone and admire them for the decisions they make, because they're analyzing the motivations behind those decisions. So if you're in a Scorpio's life, like if they're your friend or if they're your boyfriend or husband, you know, they probably have observed you and liked your decision making and respect the decisions you made based on your need to survive. Like, they judge them as morally good decisions. Because Pluto is also ruled by Pluto, which is like a very dark, transformative, kind of like I like to think of them like a dead rose, like still beautiful but almost tragic at the same time. You know, they want to get to know you fully. They're going to profile you. They want to know everything before they give you this intense Pluto love of theirs. And that means that they're going to love the dark, ugly parts along with the beautiful parts of you. And that's what makes them so special. They're not like Cancer in that way. Cancer is more prone to maybe accept your nasty habits, but really love your good habits and your nurturing habits. Well, Scorpio is like, no, if I'm gonna choose you to be in my life, then I'm just gonna have to love all of you. I'm going to love the dark and I'm going to love the light. And they'd rather love you in that whole way than be in the dark. You know, they do not like to be in the dark, but they will keep you in the dark about them until you pass their test. And once you get that Scorpio Gold card, they will slowly let you know them on a deep level. And you have to understand, because they feel the need to love people completely, and you know, they love the dark and the light, they're hesitant to tell you about them, because they know that people are mostly pushed away by dark elements. So they don't want to get rejected in that way by you, because to them that's like saying you don't love them. If they tell you something dark and ugly about themselves and you just say something negative about it or make them feel bad about it, then that's like an emotional rejection, and they're going to pull back. It's important to understand that Scorpio suns truly do radiate strong, intense energy that attract people, and they also at the same time want and desperately need intimate relationships. Well, sometimes, like, think about intimate relationships. The sexy planets are Moon and Mars. So if a Scorpio is seeking an intimate relationship, most of the time they're going to be looking for those intense conjunction and squares to their Moon and their Mars. This is why it is pivotal that if you're trying to get close to a Scorpio sun, you need to know their Moon sign and their Mars sign, because those two things might be completely unrelated to their Scorpio sun. They might be in a light, airy element, and you could be missing the mark when in terms of relating to them deeply, because your Moon is your most private, deep part of yourself. Well, I like to think of this case as an example for this. The Lacey and Scott Peterson case. Yes, the Scott Peterson who murdered poor Lacey, his wife, and is currently in jail in California somewhere for life. He's insisting that he's innocent, but the evidence is not looking so good. But I couldn't help but look at their charts and notice that he has a Gemini moon, and it's about at 1 degree. I was looking for contacts in their chart, synastry contacts. Well, nothing in her chart was really hitting that Moon or Mars in Libra, so that Gemini moon, Mars in Libra is hard. It wasn't aggravating it in the way that a Scorpio sun really needs that intensity. I think they had like a sextile between her Pluto in Libra and his Gemini moon, which sextiles are kind of like easygoing gifts you can uncover. And even she had an air moon in Aquarius, but it was not even making an aspect to his Gemini moon. And also, I think she had a Gemini Venus, but Venus is nice and cute and can be romantic, but it's not that heavy hitting, intense energy that a Scorpio sun is seeking. So I couldn't help but feel that, not that it excuses it, but that Scott was seeking extramarital affairs, wrongly of course, but to get those intense moon Mars encounters that a Scorpio sun, you know, those intimate relationships that Scorpio needs. And unfortunately he didn't articulate this to his wife, and God rest her soul, she's probably, her Taurus sun was probably thinking that she found her Prince Charming and was just so enamored with him. Her family even said that there was no indication that he wasn't just completely devoted to Lacey. And I think it's because the sun is so strong, and you know, she probably didn't look beyond that. She was like, no, I feel this intensity, he is devoted to me. But poor thing had no idea that that very loud, mutual, light and airy Gemini moon and smooth, charming Libra Mars like just wasn't getting what it needed. And unfortunately he didn't articulate this to her, and things just went so badly. But yes, if you're trying to get to know a Scorpio sun, do not ignore those things. It is, I think it's more important than any other sun sign that you know more details about a Scorpio sun. But like I said, easier said than done. They often hold these details very close to their chest and are not easily going to give up the information, so good luck. Okay, so because Scorpio is very observant of people, because they want to know those motives behind their actions, they want to know the emotional, instinctual survival motives behind their actions, so this can make them great detectives. They will figure out something. Now, they're not like Gemini. They can't figure out everything at once. But if you're their decided target, if you've gotten on their bad side somehow and they want to figure out why you're doing something, they're going to figure it out. I'm sorry. That's just their talent. They're going to uncover that truth. And that's why they do make great detectives, or just solvers of mysteries in general. They really are great at getting to the bottom of things, and they're unrelenting. Once Scorpio has decided upon an action, think of Mars meeting Pluto, they are not going to stray away because they're a fixed energy. They're stubborn, so they're just going to, if they choose this path, then they're going to stick with it, and nothing you can do can make them change it. Because they're so fixed, they often don't like change, which is very common with fixed signs. So Scorpio doesn't like emotional change. So if they decide that, you know, you're the person that they're going to love forever, they're going to get upset, you know, with if you change. So because Scorpio is so Pluto, Mars at the same time, and like magnetic, think of the magnets that I was talking about, they can be pulled towards dark things way too easy sometimes, and this can really dampen their spirit. They can be too caught up in the death and destruction of things, and also just disappointed by people's decisions, because like I said, they're in tune with why people emotionally make decisions, and this can just cause them to be kind of over everyone and just feel like, you know, everyone's rotten, everyone's dark inside. And while they're searching for their sacred light, you know, often when a Scorpio loves someone, it's because they see a light innocence in them and it lightens their load. So maybe instead of being so disappointed, Scorpio suns, by human beings' decisions and why they make decisions, maybe just accept it as nature. Because if you are going to be moving towards Sagittarius, because Sagittarius is the sign that comes after Scorpio, then, you know, that means you're trying to evolve towards seeking higher truths. And maybe the higher truth is that it's just simply nature. kind of like Taurus. Think of how Taurus is. It's simply just human nature, and maybe that makes it not really good or bad, and we're all human beings. So maybe that can kind of lighten your load a little bit, you know, just realizing that it's just being a human being. It's just natural. It's pure natural. So I believe that Scorpio suns shine brightest when they use that magnetism, people's interest in them, and their keen eye together to do good things that will not only lighten their spiritual load, because a lot of times Scorpio suns probably feel like they're walking around the world in weighted boots. Have you ever walked around with, I think some workout people have it, like you could put weights on your legs or on your shoes and it makes it heavier and it's like you're working out at the same time. I imagine that's how Scorpio sun people feel like walking around, because everything's just so heavy. Everything's so heavy to them. So I think that you really do shine when you can use your detective eye to help people to uncover dark truths that will do good for people. Like if you're investigating a murder and you find the culprit, you know, that will be good for the victims' families. Or when you are uncovering a truth that will help society. So maybe not totally forget where you came from, which is Libra. People who, you know, you're kind of like Gemini in that way. You can expose corrupt politicians, like show them for who they actually are. There's so many things you can do with that. And I think you can also shine bright by helping people accept their own darkness, because that's something you accept in other people. And maybe, you know, also something you're disappointed in with other people sometimes, kind of confusing feelings, but just the acceptance of darkness. And because a lot of times human beings are prone to run away from darkness, and because you're so magnetic, maybe you can make them feel okay about themselves even if they have ugly dark parts inside, which makes you great psychologists, stuff like that. I also think, you know, you can use your magnetism to draw people towards you in order, because you're reaching for Sagittarius, you're evolving to that. So maybe you can be like a teacher role and use people being so drawn to you and put that natural magnifying glass that's on you onto a good issue that needs attention, and you can show why it needs attention because you're such a detective. And when you study something, you go to the very beginning, so you can break it down for them why something's important to understand inside and out, light and dark. I think you're also great at protecting things that need to be protected. So maybe you can put yourself out there protecting weaker people than yourself, but don't get used, don't get drained. You have to learn how to balance that a little bit, because like I said, if you're willing to go to hell for someone, sometimes you'll just end up in trouble and they won't. You know, another cool thing about Scorpio suns that I don't think it's mentioned often enough is because they are, you know, heading towards Sagittarius, which Sagittarius is like a clown, super funny. They can have like a dark sense of humor, like they're pulled towards the humor, but they're still kind of heavy people. And I really love the Scorpio sense of humor, so I think you guys are really funny personally. One of my good friends who's unfortunately passed away now used to be like my funniest person ever in my life, and I really miss his humor. So you guys are funny and I recognize that. Be careful of the truths you uncover, Scorpio suns, because don't forget karma. And I think that karma is a big theme with Pluto and all things Scorpio. You know, just because you can expose someone and maybe get revenge, maybe they did something to you, and because you uncovered this truth you can expose them. Be careful of the energy that puts out there, going the path of vengeance, because that could come back at you, and it oftentimes does. So please choose your battles wisely, because Mars is your co-ruler, and that's even a thing with Aries, the selection of battles. Don't forget that. I kind of think that Beauty and the Beast is a good way to understand Scorpio. You know, the Beast is kind of like a Scorpio, rough around their edges but magnetic, and he did put Belle through a lot of tests before he opened up to her. And then at the end, when all the, yes, I'm talking about the Disney movie, but at the end when all the people were attacking him, you know, instead of raging like he used to, he just surrendered, because that's how you guys are. When you love someone, You're willing to go to hell for them, and sometimes that makes you transform in a good way. So maybe he would have ripped everyone's necks, before, but instead he's just surrendering and getting beat up. And that's what's so beautiful about you guys, is that you're so transformative, especially when it counts. So if you feel so heavy, Scorpio, don't forget that that's your superpower. You can transform, and you're going to shine bright when you do transform. So although you're fixed, don't be afraid to shed things that are just making you unnecessarily heavy, because even if you lighten your load, guys, that doesn't take away from your depth. You're always going to be deep people. You're a very deep lake, and you're worth exploring. Everyone is curious about you. So don't think that makes you less interesting or anything like that. That's totally crazy. I also like to associate Phantom of the Opera with Scorpio, because it kind of represents the more Pluto part of Scorpio, like the stalking nature. Like the whole time the Phantom's in the background silently observing Christine, the beautiful opera singer. And I really love that song, Music of the Night. I will link it down. But sometimes you guys forget that you're also Martian, so don't forget to outwardly assert yourself when you want something, whether that's a conversation with someone or a possible romantic connection. Don't forget the assertion part, because 9 times out of 10 they're going to be into it, because you're a Scorpio. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. And if they reject you, just brush it off like a Libra would, because you still remember that part of Libra. Or evolve into laughing it off, such as a Sagittarius would. Don't let that hold you back from really going after those desirable targets, potential desirable targets of yours. So as far as music, I'm going to talk about it a lot, but of course BJÖRK is like a Scorpio princess, and I will be linking my favorite songs of hers in my description. I think she has like 5 planets in Scorpio. It's crazy, but you could just feel that intensity throughout her music. But anyways, I hope you loved this video, guys, and please let me know what you think in the comments below. This is Midnight telling you bye. Bye.